Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. We are going to have a fun conversation today. We are going to talk all things tracking. Dun, dun, dun. So, to track or not to track? That is the question. So, before we dive in to the conversation, I want to welcome in all the new listeners. If you are new to the Fasting for Life podcast, we appreciate you joining us and giving us a shot. We hope that you become long-term listeners, and the things that we go over each and every episode, actionable steps that you can take now, today, in this moment, and apply it to your fasting and health journey. That is ultimately what we want for you. If you want to know more about who we are and why we do what we do, why we have our challenges, why we have our coaching, why we come to you week in and week out with an episode, head back to episode 1. Give it a listen. Hear about our journey, how fasting transformed our lives, and ultimately, we want the same for you. If you're a long-term listener, thanks for tuning in again this week. And I said this to Tommy right before we hopped on to record, is during our show prep, right before we were about to go through our warm-up and test the audio. I was like, how have we not talked about this before? 250 episodes in, 4 years, 3.5 million downloads later. Have we not talked about this from a big picture perspective? And what was your response?
That's what we always say.
Right. So we're still going. We're still doing it. I said, well, if we ever get to the point where we're not able to say that, right? That's what we always say. Then maybe it's time to hang up the fasting cleats.
Hang up the microphones?
Yeah, hang up the microphone, so to speak. But I think today's conversation is going to be fun. What are you going to say?
I was going to say, maybe we haven't talked about this because we came from a history of tracking. Maybe we pushed away from it, for a while, maybe had some post-traumatic tracking stress, But I think looking at it from a fresh set of eyes now, deeply ingrained in the fasting lifestyle habits, I think is going to be a cool conversation with some good actionable perspective too, regardless of if you're listening to this and you've had a history of tracking or maybe a sordid past with tracking, with
maybe
or without.
You're addicted to tracking.
Okay, yeah, that can happen too, right? Or maybe you're hiding away from tracking because it can become it can almost become an obsession, or I'm scared to do it because it can feel so time consuming, or like I'm trying, but it's not helping,
Yeah, there's a level of frustration and despair at some point that can come with it too.
Yeah.
When the results don't match the expectation. So William Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more. So we do not want there to be a sea of troubles on your journey. Now, there are going to be some trials. There are going to be some ups and downs. We don't want the mind to suffer, right? Is it nobler of the mind? No, it's not nobler. It's just part of the process.
Yeah.
Right? So I really hope my AP English teachers would find out that I actually quoted Shakespeare at some point in my life, because back then it was with much guile and remorse that I did not want to be taking it. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
But this tracking conversation is really a big one, as we hear, Tommy outline the different buckets or mindset you fall into. I just want to share that after years of on-off dieting mentality, tracking, counting calories, using the equations that we did a whole episode on, and trying to figure out maintenance calories or what should my numbers be, or macros is the big thing now, all the way through intuitive eating. Well, if it fits your macros, it can work.
Sometimes.
That leaves so many different variations of how to adopt a fasting lifestyle or a tracking or non-tracking lifestyle. Now, I have moved completely away from tracking, but in the beginning, when I was fasting and lost the initial 50-pound weight loss, 48.5 pounds in 50 days, I was still tracking, because that was a tool that I had that I thought was required for me to get results. And back then it was. Now I no longer require that tool unless I've made some lifestyle changes in terms of the foods I ate. So if I was doing maybe a short-term keto application, or getting back on the low-carb train or no-carb train, or going carnivore, doing Lion's diet, where, we play around with this stuff, and variety is the spice of life. I'll track to see, am I eating enough? Where do my macros lie? But as a consistent requirement, which I think is where some of that fear comes from, where, this isn't sustainable. How the hell am I going to keep this up? It's not even working when I do it.
Yeah.
Right? From that perspective, it can be really like a mind bleep.
Yes.
So a lot of times when people come to fasting, we hear this often, like, I'm not tracking. Oh, not going to do it. Well, why do we have tracking?
Don't even say the T word to me.
Don't even say it. Not doing it.
I'm not doing it.
I've sacrificed the MyFitnessPal app. It's gone. I deleted it off my phone.
Yeah, I did a whole ritual.
Right? The reality is that it's a tool, and it can be applied. It can be used. And no matter where you fall on that spectrum of love, hate, or appreciate when it comes to tracking, there's some key mindset shifts and some cool research that we came across with a Levels article that we thought would be a good conversation. From Levels, which is one of the companies that has the CGM lifestyle metabolic component that helps you track your blood sugar, et cetera. And it really was a cool article written by Monique Brouillette. And then it was reviewed by Stephanie Grinke. She's MSRD PMHC. She's the one who kind of reviewed it, and they published it earlier this year. I thought it was a cool conversation to apply to a fasting lifestyle, where the research shows that logging meals regularly can help people hit nutrition goals, including losing weight. But there's also a cool study from Duke that you didn't really have to make that much change to get the same result. So it's going to be a fun conversation. Then we'll apply it to the fasting lifestyle and get away from the Shakespeare Hamlet stuff. Because that was probably enough for some of y'all just like me.
Right. So if we're talking about tracking, I want to kind of outline a couple of things, which would be, we could track for calories. I think that's where most folks would kind of come into this conversation or think about immediately. But like you mentioned, macronutrients, so tracking for protein, for fats, for carbohydrates, and maybe even a little bit more specifically, I know some folks and some apps look for fiber. They might look for net carbohydrates, and they might.
My head hurt.
Yeah, I know, right? They might look for even like sodium and certain vitamins and mineral levels too. So you can get as detailed as you want to or don't want to. There's a lot of times there's a functionality where you can scan the barcode, and so that's built into databases, which makes for a really, really cool, convenient way to do that. But at the same time, any sort of packaged food, boxed food, the way that they have to fit into the rules and the regulations that are around, the FDA guidelines for those actual labels, is like, a lot of times we're kind of barking up the wrong tree immediately when we're scanning for those, because we can't scan a barcode on a whole food source, right? On something that's natural. And so the label becomes, or the macronutrients become a lot less important when it's a natural food source versus a packaged food source. But then the convenience of actually doing that can pull you towards some of the packaged stuff when you're in the grocery store. So that's a little bit of a double-edged sword right there.
Restaurants, what I just heard too, is when you go out to eat, it's hard to track.
Sure.
Right? You're like, what, excuse me, sir, ma'am, what oils do you cook with? And how much do they put in the pan before they saute my insert food you ordered, right? It's hard to.
Right.
Now, a lot of places now will have the nutritional panels, right? So
An estimate.
So
an average.
back in the day, I had a Chipotle bowl that I made, and I went through that damn nutritional label and I added all the stuff up.
Yeah. I did it.
Yeah, right. So I had that stuff. So I want to go big picture here is that the reality is, anywhere for 60 up to 74%, if you look at the CDC data, is that overweight and obese population, right? In the United States, 59% worldwide, right? That leads to the things that we want to avoid through a fasting lifestyle: health problems, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, depression, anxiety. Insulin has a key component or a key relationship to 8 out of the 10 reasons for all-cause mortality here in the United States. 80% is tied back to insulin. So we know that the research shows, only 5% of people can keep the weight off for more than 2 to 3 years. And there's this regain and there's this ebb and flow. And most people can lose it at any given time, but it's that regain. So any goal you have, like a weight loss goal or a health goal, requires change, right? So when we look at food logging or tracking, and I want to come back to what you mentioned here, but I want to set the stage, is that we've been duped into this quantity over quality, which is what I heard you saying. And
correct.
When you're looking at serving sizes, like, holy mind bleep, I'm going to share a couple that are really astounding in terms of what you should be eating, what we typically consume. And I'll just say it out loud now. Peanut butter in the 1 tablespoon serving size we have a storied past. Okay?
Yeah, right.
But the reality of this tool for tracking, and in the beginning, when you come to fasting, you don't necessarily need to track. The rule is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's working for you, keep doing it. But if you're doing stuff and you're like, why isn't this working? Here's what self-monitoring provides, is an awareness and an objectivity that's often needed for this lifestyle change or these goals to stick. So short time tracking, and we do this inside of our coaching group. We'll do a week to 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks, which is what this research shows too, is just giving you a baseline of where you're at. Now, for my wife, she's a constant tracker. She tracks, I'd say, 350 out of 365 days a year.
Wow.
However,
that works for her, right?
Yeah, she's now simplified it where she really only cares about her protein and fiber. She's not so worried about her carb or her fat anymore, based on where she's at in terms of her body composition.
And her habits probably too.
Habits, yeah. It's just become second nature, where she now knows all of the foundation that she's built with tracking. So I just want everybody sitting here going, nope, or you've already left the episode. We apologize for not getting to this sooner. But these short bursts, these short kind of, you don't look at your mortgage principal and interest every month. I hope not. Or you don't look at it every day. You automate that payment to pay down that debt, right? You don't want to be staring it in the face. You don't need to be always reminding yourself of where it's at. You don't have to always be tracking or always be 100% on, but these short bursts of tracking can be really eye-opening, especially when we're talking about that quality versus quantity perspective. So I want to share some of those 14 foods you're probably overeating, just a couple, Tommy, but anything else to add on that kind of big picture awareness, self-monitoring piece?
I think it's just the fact that food is, we have an opportunity for it. We're always on the verge of thinking about it, whether we're fasting or we're in the middle of a nutrition opportunity window. It's always something that's like, hey, my body never stops sending me reminders if I haven't eaten in a while that, hey, I could eat something right now, right? It's a part of life. It's a part of our wiring, and it's a good thing. It's just we have to understand that we have no shortage of reminders. However, our actual behavioral patterns and what we do end up consuming are sometimes quickly forgotten or underestimated. And so that's where that deliberate self-accountability, a little bit of self-monitoring goes a long way, because when I write it down, even if I just do it in a non-judgmental way, and let's say, for example, I'm not trying to overhaul everything. I'm just going to write things down for a couple of days, whatever I do, and I'm not going to judge myself for it. I'm just going to write it down. When I go back to look at that, maybe a day or 2 or 3 days later, have you ever tried to remember what you ate for lunch like 3 or 4 days ago? It's almost impossible. It gets real impossible real quick. and you're just like, man, I thought that was such a great meal, or I thought for sure I would remember this, but just the details escape because we just have so many things. And that's one of the things that we filter out very, very quickly. So being able to just put a small light on some of these things can really demonstrate some of our habits if we need to correct some of them and make it a lot easier and more intuitive to correct.
100%. So what I just heard there is what is now being called food noise.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but what we're going to transition to now is this portion distortion.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I like that term.
Yeah, right? Portion distortion. So, if you go to IHOP, they've got the 18-wheeler or Denny's or whichever the one it is, right? Where it's like you get 5 eggs and ham and bacon and sausage and pancakes and
stacking those plates.
Yeah, and it's just like this smorgasbord of stuff, right? So value, and this happened from 1986 to 2016, just in fast food entrees increased, half an ounce, desserts by a quarter cup. Portion size growth coincided with worldwide rates of obesity from the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic in the year 2000. Supersized portions appeal to the consumerist, big marketing, big advertising, big food, whatever you want to call it. Put on your conspiracy hat there, right? The value you're getting,
big waistbands,
big waistband. You're getting more food for less money, right? Yeah. So this is definitely true in the baby boomer generation. When I can see, the early bird dinners, like, oh, we can get 2 burgers and for $19.99, dessert included, right? Like, that more.
It sounds good. It appeals to us. It sounds like a value.
Right. So this portion distortion or portion size effect refers to the normalizing of exaggerated portion sizes. And 72 studies, scientific review, regardless of sex, eating behavior, body weight, or susceptibility to hunger, ate more if given more.
Yeah.
So, duh.
Put more on that plate. I'm going to feel like, I should probably eat a little bit more, right? I don't want to waste it, or I don't want to be disrespectful for whoever put it or whoever cooked it for me. Whatever the case may be, it's right there. It can be just an opportunistic thing, or even this occupies my hands, almost like filling in the gaps, like while you're sitting there at a table.
So here's a couple, because the whole idea here is once the portion distortion takes place, why it matters, because what happens is you're going to habitually override your internal fullness cues, aka your hormones. And we've done episodes on leptin and ghrelin, and we talk about eating to satiety, and some people are like, I'm never satiated, I'm never full. Well, that shows us that your leptin and ghrelin response to your appetite, to low fat stores, leptin suppresses the appetite in response to satiety or fullness. So it's like you've got this gas pedal and brake pedal where this portion distortion or this overconsumption or the amount of energy that's put on our plate in terms of calories has been slowly increasing, right, since 1986 all the way now through 2013, which is some of the research we just mentioned.
Yeah, you're saying we're getting desensitized to seeing this amount of fuel. Not
just visually, but also from a physiological standpoint, our hunger hormones and cues are just being overridden. So here is some glaring differences in portions from the 80s to the 2020s.
Okay.
A blueberry muffin used to be 1.5 ounces in the 80s, about 200 calories. Now it's 500.
Oh,
it's
wow.
4 ounces.
Yeah. And I think you could make it bigger too.
A bottle of soda used to be 6.5 ounces. It's now 20.
Wow.
Spaghetti meatballs, American staple. 1 cup of sauce pasta and 3 small meatballs used to be 500 calories. Now it's 1,025. It's 2 cups of pasta and 3 large meatballs.
Wow.
Restaurant chicken stir fry, 2 cups. It's now 4.5 cups. Double. Grilled chicken Caesar. Oh, man. So we went to, I'm going to share a story here. Grilled chicken Caesar salad, 1.5 cups, 390 calories. Now in the 2020s, 3.5 cups on average.
Wow.
So.
But it's a salad.
Was that a speaking engagement this past weekend? Shout out, Simplified Functional Medicine. Just an amazing event. And we had a team dinner. Day 1, late. We had a team dinner on day 2, went to Brazilian steakhouse. I had been fasting all day because I was speaking, And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not eating until later because I want my brain to be sharp, right? I wanted that BDNF. I wanted to be lean, mean, and just sharp, right? For the 90-minute session I had.
Yep.
And so when I got into the steakhouse, I mean, I was the only guy with the green thing up the whole time we were there. But I felt great. No meat sweats, slept great. It was awesome. But on day 1, we all traveled. We got in, got the event kicked off. So we went to Yard House.
Okay.
Now, Yard House has massive menu, right?
Yeah.
Tommy, you and I have been there.
Yeah. Drinks
menu.
and plates. I mean, massive glasses, massive plates, and massive menu.
But it was interesting because in the conversations, because we were going to eat late because it was a long day, people were like, yeah, I think I'll just get a salad or something light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. So we get there. A couple people got burgers. I got the chicken lettuce wraps because they're incredible. And then I just got an extra side of 2 chicken breasts.
Oh, nice.
And I was looking at the different, because all the calories are on there now, I was looking at the different menu options. And the salads were 30% more calorically dense than a lot of the other foods on the menu.
Mm.
And I'm like, eat late. I'm like, there's just this disconnect.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds like the right choice.
Yeah, from a dieting perspective, it sounds like the right choice, right?
Perfect diet food.
Exactly. So, couple other things here is the frustration that comes with reading the nutrition labels, right? So, orange juice. We talked about the soda, right? That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to mention a couple of others. Would be like oatmeal or granola. Right? Yeah. So the serving for the bare naked granola, shout out, 1/4 cup.
Yeah,
is
it's
a suggested
good stuff.
Serving size.
Yeah, but who's eating a 1/4 cup? Who's measuring this out?
A 1/4 cup, 4 tablespoons.
Yeah, impossible.
What? Chips. Don't do it. Serving size
chips?
on the chip bag is like 11 to 15 chips.
Get out of here. There's no way.
Mixed nuts. About 18 nuts. Who's eating 18 nuts?
Yeah. If you count them out, I mean, that's like nothing. It's so little.
Serving size on bread, 1 slice. Serving size on eggs, 1 egg.
Half a sandwich, 1 egg. Okay.
2 crackers. Carr's whole wheat crackers. 2 crackers is a serving size.
I mean, that's so ridiculous. And here's the problem with tracking, and you're tracking these foods. Do you really want to put that you had 7 servings? So even that, like there's all these little subconscious resistance points to being accurate with this stuff. So we have portion distortion. Even when we're tracking, you got to keep clicking the quantity button to get it to the right number, right? And then what about if you put it back in the pantry and then you go back for another serving or another 3 servings? Do you go back and edit it? It's very easy to underreport these things, even when we're trying to shine a light on them.
Especially oils, peanut butters, those types of things.
Oh, yeah.
And I am like anti-weigh, anti-scale. Even though we have a scale in our house, I weigh my dog's food every night. We feed him raw dog food, so it's like slap it in the bowl, weigh it out. I now know some of my wife's like meals. I don't even have to weigh them. I can just look, right, and know what we're doing. But so the point is here is going back to the Shakespeare quote, to track or not to track, right? When it comes to fasting, in the beginning, it's when we talk about the hunger hormones and the cues and the food choices. I want to share the research, that was talking about effective, is meal tracking effective in weight loss? So I'll share the first one, and then the Duke study I want you to share, which is the one that was really cool, is that we don't need to do this long-term or forever, but sometimes when you have a considerable weight loss, for instance, my 48 and a half pounds in 50 days, my habits in terms of my portion size, the visual, and my wanting of the food, the serving size or the portion size, my habits, my lifestyle stuff hadn't changed yet to allow that to stick in such a short period of time.
Of course.
Right? So looking at these studies, there's a strong link between tracking what you eat, aka self-monitoring your intake, and losing weight. Fasting can be that solution right out the bat without monitoring, in our opinion. But at some point, you need to have this 7 to 14 day tool in your tool belt. So this one study, one of the largest weight loss trials conducted 1,685 people for 6 months. And there were many components meant to support weight loss: weekly group sessions, kind of what we do in coaching, behavioral counselors, an exercise program, a reduced calorie kind of plan or diet, and the maintenance of food. So at the end of the study, most participants lost 69 participants lost weight. So at the end of the study, most of the people lost weight. 70% or 69% lost at least 9 pounds with a mean weight loss of roughly 13. So really great results, right?
Okay, yeah. Nice and consistent.
6 months, however. Sustainable, or have you given up at that point? Because
that's a long time, especially if you're going like, how much did the scale move? Was this worth it? Because that's pretty slow over 6 months if you have some weight to lose.
Right? Especially when you're doing fasting. So researchers found that consistent meal tracking was one of the most significant predictors of weight loss. Participants who regularly logged their meals every day of the week lost about twice the amount of weight.
Wow.
So are we saying, as a fasting lifestyle, as a fasting podcast, as a fasting for life advocate, right? No, not saying track every day for 6 months, but there are periods of time where you're going to have to recalibrate on your journey. If you're fasting and you're not losing, it's easy to underfast and overconsume, underfast and overconsume, or overfast and underconsume. Yeah. And that's not what we want. These periodic check-ins should work. But share the Duke study, Tommy, because that was really cool.
Yeah, it was. And so what they did in Duke in 2019 was they divided participants up into 3 different groups. And they had one group who they were weighing in daily, they were tracking daily, and they were getting like guidance every single week too. And then they had another group that was just weighing in daily, and then that was all that they were doing. And then they had a third group who was just tracking what they ate daily. And they found no difference in the weight loss between those 3 groups. And
hold on, say that again.
Yeah, they found no significant difference in the weight loss between those 3 groups. So whether you were tracking multiple things each day and then getting guidance each week versus just weighing in every day or just tracking what you ate every day. And so of those 3 groups, I would say that, when you weigh in every day, not that that's a bad thing, but it keeps you really hyper-focused and really almost kind of judgmental on, can I check the box for the day? You jump on there first thing in the day, first thing when you wake up, and then you go, okay, did I achieve my goal for yesterday? Which would be, seeing either maintaining on the scale, or most likely for most of us, did it go down a little bit? And so that's a big yes, no, black, white judgment right there first thing in the morning.
Right.
Whereas if I'm just tracking my food, or I'm going to advocate a little bit of fasting tracking rather than just food tracking here in a minute. If you were just tracking what you ate, you can be even less judgmental. It can hit your self-worth, self-confidence for the day less, and it's less focused on just a lagging outcome measure, which would be, did the scale move, versus, hey, what did I actually do? And now I'm able to see that. I would rather track what I ate rather than tracking my weight each day for a matter of 12 weeks if I had the choice. And the outcome was predicted to be the same.
This was another study that they mentioned in the article. Was participants in a meal logging diet plan were asked to offer feedback. And this is I want to shift into that food noise conversation. Some people said food tracking, and then I want to make sure we talk about like apps and all that kind of thing. Some people said food tracking opened their eyes to how much they were over consuming, right? They were surprised by the calorie count of their foods and the amount that they're overeating. And some of you fasting advocates out there that have been around doing this for a long time, you're like, tracking, no way, I'm not going to do it. That's a diet mentality. Yeah. It is.
Why are you adding complexity? Fasting's simple.
I agree. Fasting is simple. So we're talking about this in the use case of a tool when the expectation or the reality of the things you've been doing, the changes you've made, aren't matching. There's a disconnect. Where can we go to find a connection or uncover some things? Yeah. Well, it's food and food choices, right? Because fasting's only half the equation.
Quality. Yeah.
Right? So other people said that tracking actually increased the motivation to make significant behavior changes, right? So everybody's a little bit different. For instance, like going to fast food restaurants or eating out, it makes it more complex. Like, oh, I don't feel like logging it. If you've committed to tracking your food for 7 days after you've lost some weight fasting, or you're like, what do I break what should I eat or how much should I eat? Right? We've got soft guidelines in the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss. You can grab it in the show notes in terms of meeting you where you're at. If you're completely non-tracking, great. Stay consistent with your fasting windows. If you're like, I've been fasting, but the results stop, okay, great. Here's what we recommend for macros and in terms of percentages of your daily intake.
Yeah.
And if you fall somewhere in between, right, then that's fine too, but you need to get those repetitions. And this idea of food noise is something that we talk about inside of our challenges. There was a study done that did a questionnaire for people, and they had different categories: healthy, weight, overweight, and obese. It was like, okay, how many food decisions do you think you make in a daily, on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. How many times do you think about food?
Right. And
what a question.
Yeah, right. So as you're listening, come up with a number. Right now, maybe we've pre-framed it in a way that the number is going to be higher, but we've also done this in our live challenges in our coaching group, where I'll post a picture of a meal that I had. Right. It was 6 eggs. It was an entire 5 eggs, an entire package of Applegate chicken and maple sausages, and it was 1 bag of hash browns cooked in tablespoon of oil and butter, a tablespoon of butter for the eggs. And we always ask, what's the calorie count on this? And it's a big amount of food. And people are like, 2,500, 3,000, 1,750. Rarely do we get anyone that's in the ballpark of it was 980 calories. It's about 1,000 calories. It's like, we're not supposed to be inherently good at this. Right. So when you think about food, the average response to that study was 14.4 times a day.
That was the guess?
That was the guess.
Yeah.
The reality was...
That sounds reasonable.
Right? Yeah, I'm like, okay, 3 meals a day, couple decisions, conversation with the wife, kid wanted a second dinner because they didn't want what we were having. Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
Once per waking hour? That sounds reasonable.
226.7 decisions a day.
Yeah, that sounds excessive.
That's food noise. It's a colloquial term, right, nowadays, but if you go up a category in the BMI chart, up to the obese category, it's 100 more decisions per category around food per day. So food noise is what we're experiencing in today's world, especially when you're fasting, right? Because everybody's like, oh, you're starving yourself. Oh, don't break the first 2 rules of fasting, right? Keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
But it's a term used to describe the constant thoughts and ruminations about food that many people experience, especially in that category, that overweight and obese category. So it's influenced by internal and external. Hunger signals, thoughts of food, sensory cues, environmental factors, social cues. There's more food noise if you're in the environments that lend itself to that, or you're in a relationship where you're both foodies, right? So how do we start to regain the food noise? Well, for me, it's always having a solid plan, a fasting plan in place, and then having my food decisions pretty much ironed out for the week, like what meals I'm having, where's my are we doing a movie night with the kids, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and being okay for some of that to change, in the moment. Like not every meal is going to work out like exactly how you planned it.
Let me bring my scale to the restaurant. No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, we have an app, my wife and I share, we share a note on our iPhones, and it's the weekly meals, and
yeah, same.
And so we pretty much, we have like a flex day in there. And then typically like 5 of the 6 will work out. Some weeks 4 of the 6, and every once in a while it's only 3 of the 6 like work out as planned. And that's okay. And so, but speaking of apps, whenever we're thinking about this kind of stuff too, it can be helpful to like have that stuff front of mind. If you think back to like the previous generation of tracking, I think of like MyFitnessPal, I think of Lose It, things like that. Those were all focused on tracking the food. Whereas now we see some of the shift towards tracking the fast too, which I think can be more helpful. But one of the problems can be if I bring my old diet baggage into fasting, it can be like, I don't want to track anymore. But the thing about it is if I start tracking my fasts, my fasting times, my days that I just burn through my previous fat stores rather than eating, that can be much more helpful too, versus, tracking every meal and every calorie and all that stuff. So being willing to shift that frame of thinking a little bit can be also extremely helpful and good for long-term results.
And the mobile app, research, clearly showed that there is a correlation between the obese and overweight and obese groups that are really trying, to get healthy and lose weight. Fasting is going to accelerate that for you, in terms of low and slow, eat less, move more, standard calorie restriction. But the research clearly shows that the use of digital apps can be incredibly helpful, rather than the old school, walking around with a pen and a notepad trying to remember, what did I eat for dinner?
Right.
I can't remember. Like, I don't even know. So some tips for success with tracking, not fasting, is, really doing it right away after you've done it, which I was just talking about. Don't wait till later in the day to do it. Or my wife even does it the day before. Like, she'll have it. Yeah. It's she does Duolingo. We talk before bed. She has tea. She does Duolingo. I go and scan the perimeter, let the dogs out.
Yeah.
Shut it down. And then she'll do her food tracking for the next day. Right. Okay. Now for me, I know what my meal is the next day because I'm fasting. So there's a balance here, right? But consistency is key. So accuracy, timely, consistently, and accurately. Again, for short durations. Right? No matter where you fail on the spectrum of, I ain't never doing that again, or I think I'm ready to try it, right? Or it's okay, but I don't think it's sustainable. Wherever you are, using it in those short use cases after some significant weight loss or after falling off the wagon, because there really is a psychological component. And there was a survey that they did, focusing on calorie counting and healthy eating in journals. Sometimes that can lead to feelings of shame and guilt or obsession, right? And that's the reality of it, is I don't want to share that. So if that's you, I just want to make sure that we address this in the food noise conversation, is that when you start fasting or you get back onto fasting, you start pushing your fasting windows, the food noise can be pretty strong. But we really want to have the Mel Robbins, brush your shoulders off, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, give yourself a virtual hug, high five. Food is food. There is yes, there are imbalanced food relationships and emotional eating and all that stuff, but it's okay. So start to learn on those repetitions of compartmentalizing the binging or the attachment that you've put food to your identity, and start becoming more presently aware of it. And that's where I really think combining fasting with some short-term tracking, if you're in one of those places that we outlined earlier, can be really beneficial.
So if I'm thinking about this from a fasting perspective, one question comes to mind that we don't hear addressed a lot, which is, okay, well, when I reach my maintenance goal, whether that's my goal weight, or I feel like I don't need to restrict in the ways that I have in the past, get off of the diet train, or maybe even not using fasting as a fat burning tool anymore, would tracking be helpful or not? Because we've seen a lot of folks get to their maintenance weight and not really want to go back to tracking because they used it for so long. But we've also seen it be a very, very helpful tool during compartmentalized uses during maintenance as well, to kind of, like you mentioned earlier, recalibrating your plates and your plate sizes and your meals, and just highlighting what are some of my habits, especially when things maybe they just don't quite feel as intuitive or as easy as they were. Then that can be really helpful to kind of get back on track or gain even more momentum and intuition with what you're eating and how you're doing it.
Yep, absolutely. So, Tommy, I really feel like, depending on where you are as the listener, where you are in your fasting journey, where you are with your relationship with tracking, there's a lot of different takeaways you can have from today. It's consistent fasting windows, consistency wins over time. To track or not to track, that is the question.
Always.
So just remove the long-term, I got to do this forever, and really hone in on the benefits of a short-term duration of just kind of getting your bearings. and some present time self-consciousness or awareness on those behaviors, because the system we're in with the serving sizes and the quantity over quality and all of that value and portion issues, for, what was the terminology? I'm forgetting it now.
The portion distortion.
Portion distortion. Thank you.
Yeah.
That stuff's real. It's out there. We see it. We experience it. So we want to give you some tools and tips and tricks that you can insulate yourself. So set those fasting timers. Go grab a resource in the show notes if you heard one that resonated with you. Tommy, appreciate the conversation as always, sir, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.